Hello, students again. Okay, so this is a continuation of our lecture, of our first lecture, where we started discussing the elements of design. So now we will go through each one of them one by one and see examples and explain more detail about them. So we mentioned before that the elements of design are what? The fundamental building blocks of any composition, of any design, okay? So these pieces, these elements, the pieces, okay, work together to form a unified composition. And when utilized, meaning used successfully, create a strong dynamic visual layout, meaning a good design, okay? A successful design. So the designer uses these elements as tools that control how a message is delivered to an audience, meaning the target people that will look at the design or that will use the design. Please understand, students, that these words, okay, the terminology that is used is important for you as a designer. Not you need to not only understand them, but also understand how to use the terminology, okay? Because in future, when you, for example, someone asks you to explain your design, actually you will do it in this class, in the final project. You will have a report to write. So you need to be familiar with some words, okay, that, well, is used by any designer, any professional designer to explain about design, okay? So being able to talk about design is as important as designing, because you might, for example, end up with a, let's say you designed something and it is a successful design. But when someone asks you, explain to me about this design, how did you end up with it? How did you start? How? You will not be able to explain. And if you don't explain, you don't present your design in a successful way, you're actually destroying whatever you made. Because everybody will think, okay, if this person cannot talk about his design, then obviously the design is not good. So you need to learn a few terminology for how to talk about something, how to explain something, okay? Okay. Now, let's start with the first element of what we have, which is the most simple one. It is a point, okay? The point, just point, or many points together. So what is a point, okay? Here is a definition. Point in geometry is a location, a place, okay? It has no size, no length, no depth, okay? It is a dot. A point is a dot, okay? Now, if we have a line, for example, a line is defined, basically it's made out of points, okay? So if you put many points together, it can, if they're close to each other, it can make it look like a line or create a line, okay? But point is the most simple element of all. It's one-dimensional, okay? One dimension. Here we have just a few points, as you can see. If we have 2 points together, it can be connected with a line, 3 points, and so on, okay? Now let's see some examples of designs, illustrations, okay, that use the element point and use only the element point. In general, okay, because some of these examples you cannot, you know, sometimes when you design something, it's very difficult to isolate. Just, for example, use one of the elements without, you know, combining. So it's not easy, but I tried to find the best possible examples available. So we can see these designs are made out of points, actually. Even these here that look as if they are shaded, if you look closely, you'll find they are made out of points, 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 very small points close to each other. But from a distance, they appear to be shaded, okay? So you can use point to create this effect, but it is not shading, okay? It looks like it. So here are other designs. These are two-dimensional designs, illustrations. These are, you know, three-dimensional designs that employ the element point. This is actually architectural elements, and this is a product here, lamp. And here, this is actually an architectural building. So you can see it can be applied in real designs, okay, 2 or 3 dimensional. Now here, of course, we have also other elements mixed into it, like color and these kind of things, but these are real designs, okay? In real designs, it's very difficult to find the things, the elements, the basic elements of design separated. It's always a combination of them, and also principles of design that we will talk later about. Now, we will talk about a line now. Line is another element of design, and this one is actually the most important. I would say it's the most important of the elements because it's so varied. It can be used in so many different ways, alone, without any other elements. And it can create complete designs only by using line. Line is so important. And it can create so many different effects. So let's see what is written here. So of course, it's one of the most important elements. You can use line to define forms, to define the shape or a form of an object. So to draw something, for example, using a line, you can make something look like something. There are so many different types: thick lines, thin lines, smooth, jagged, you know, rigid looking, mechanical looking, organic, you know, like looking like freehand, variation of a line. So for example, starting thick and going thin, okay? So here we have a thick line, strong line, then it becomes something else. So the quality of a line, quality, okay? This is another way of discussing line. So the type of line, you say the quality of the line, okay? Has the ability to express psychological characteristics of a composition to an audience. So this is very important here. So the type of line I'm using, okay, can express can give a psychological effect. Like, for example, I look at this type of line, for example, a designer made a composition made out of lines, and I look at it, and the type of lines he used make me think about something, make me feel something. So how does the way you use line, how can you influence or affect the viewer's psychology? What the viewer thinks, what the viewer feels, what the viewer perceives in what you did as a designer. This is very important. And because line is a basic element of design, the way you use it can be very powerful. Like you can, as I said, make a whole design out of only using line, and it can affect the viewer in a very profound way. And there are thousands and thousands of line types that can be used. And the psychological effect is very important. Remember this. Because when you start your projects, you will have to know how to manipulate the elements of design to influence the viewer, which will be me. I will be looking at your projects, and you have to communicate to me something specific. If you're not good at manipulating and understanding these elements, okay, and how you can use them, you will not be able to influence my psychology or to make me see what you want me to see in your design. Okay, just remember this. Now, there are so many different types, as we said. In general, people have tried to categorize, like, for example, categorize them to make a little bit more clear, because these thousands of lines, we can categorize them. For example, we can say vertical lines, okay, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, curved, and so on. And also, what in general, psychologically, they represent. So vertical lines, for example, it makes us feel dignity, formality, stability, strength. They are not always very clear. Like when you see a vertical line, you don't immediately know what you are thinking. Like, oh, I think it's a stable line. But you as a designer, you have to be able to extract this from your brain. Now, any person who is not a designer, it's not required to know what they feel. But you as a designer must question yourself always. So I look at this line. What does it make me feel? So in general, vertical lines give us this kind of impression, okay, of more stability, of strength, of formality. Horizontal lines, on the other hand, can make us feel calm, peace, relaxation. Now, this is not always the case, because when we have a composition, meaning we use many elements, or let's say just line, but in many different ways. So for example, I have a line here that's horizontal, and then I put a vertical line here, and maybe 2 or 3 vertical lines. Maybe then I put a curved line here. So, okay, this line, for example, gives us this feeling. This line gives us this feeling, this line. So, but what feeling, what overall impression does all of the lines give us together in our composition? This is very important. Also, when you design later using the elements, you will not be using just one, for example, line. You will use 100, maybe 200 lines. And when I see the composition as a whole, it needs to give me the, let's say, the feeling that you want me to feel and see, okay? Diagonal lines in general can represent action, activity, excitement, movement. It makes us feel something is moving, okay? Curved lines represent freedom, a little bit of a natural effect, having the appearance of softness, okay? It's different than if you have this kind of line, okay? This, and it's different than if you have this kind of line. It is more softer. It is more natural looking. So it gives us a different kind of impression, a different feeling psychologically, okay? So here are more examples of basically lines, okay? Different types of lines and what they are called, but these are just very basic types. You can, as I said, have thousands of types and even combine types. Like I can start with a line that looks like this and end up slowly with a line that's smooth. Or start with these lines, look at them. For example, start with a thick line and then it becomes thin. Or thin, thick, and then thin, and then thick again, and then thin. Or just the one uniform line. Dotted lines, well, actually, made out of small lines. These are horizontal, these are vertical, these are double lines, these are, at an angle. So it's endless possibilities and endless combination possibilities, okay? And you need to know which of these millions of lines to use in your design, and what combination, and where to put them, and how to put them together in a composition to create a successful design. So we already, in general, discussed this. So lines are used in general to convey, give us a specific kind of feeling in a design in general. Now, these here are very important things. Line can show movement. Line can suggest or show rhythm. Line can create textural results. Line can indicate emotional effects. Line can be used to draw shapes. Line can be used to enhance perspective. So all of this the line can do alone. So by using a specific line, I can show a movement. I can direct the viewer's eye from here to here, okay? And it can create a movement. Or I can make it to look like there is no movement. Rhythm, okay? A certain type of rhythm, like in music. You can create it by employing certain line types and combining them in certain ways. You can create a texture. Every material have a kind of texture. You have rough textures, smooth textures, different shape textures, like what is the texture of wood, for example. So I can create the effect of texture, I can draw it using lines. The way I use the line, I can create the effect of texture. I can draw what? I can indicate emotional effects as well. The type of line already I discussed, it can give you a feeling, a certain emotional feeling by looking at it. So if you see a strong, for example, a design that have very strong lines combined in a way that, for example, it can make us feel uncomfortable, it can make us feel certain things, or it can make us feel relaxed or happy or nervous, for example, okay? So depending on how you use the line in the design, it can create emotional effects. And you need to pay attention to this because you will actually do that in the projects coming, okay? So you need to become really good at understanding what line can do, really. Line can be used to draw shapes. I already discussed it. You can draw any shape using line or a combination of lines. So when we look at the shape, when we look at your lines, we actually see a shape. Okay, I can draw using line a star, for example, okay? Now, when the viewer sees this, the viewer will not see line, they will see the object, the shape. Line can be used to enhance perspective. Now, we see in these lines, as I said here, especially these lines that start thick and go to thin, okay? I can use this effect to enhance perspective. So if I draw, for example, something in perspective, you already know what is perspective. 2-point perspective, 1-point perspective. Now, if I draw a table in perspective, okay, and I draw it from a certain angle, the lines that are close to me will be more thick, And then so I will start with a thick line, and then when it goes away from me, the line will become more and more thin. Now, you can draw perspective using just a normal, regular line. But if I use a varied line, meaning the objects that are close to me, the lines that are close to me are more thick, and then as they go away from me, they become more thin. This enhances the perspective. It makes it more strong, more clear, more beautiful, more appealing. It makes it more to look like a perspective than if you just use one regular boring line and draw the whole drawing just using this line. You need to vary lines sometimes, very thick and then thin, and then others are, so some are thick, some are thin, some are starting thick, then going to thin. There are so many variations, okay, that can be used to enhance perspective. Now, all of this we already actually discussed in previous slides. So the quality of the line, we already said what is quality of line. Hand-drawn or precise, so you can use a ruler to draw a very precise line, or using your hand-drawn lines can say a lot about the mood you are setting with your design. So what is the mood of your design, the feel that you want to give, okay? And also how lines interact together. Look at these, for example, examples and these examples. Look, this, for example, is made out of many lines together. Look at this, for example, and compare it with this. This gives us a different feeling than this. This gives us a different feeling than this composition, okay? So, so the way they interact, if you have several lines together, how they interact with each other is very important to give us the final feel that you are intending. Here also a few examples of, for example, lines used to indicate emotions, like anger, for example, okay? Look at these lines. Energy, for example. If we look at these here lines, they kind of are energetic. They give us a feeling of energy somehow. Joy and the anger, definitely, these look disturbing lines, okay? They make us feel a negative emotion. So emotions we can divide into negative and positive, and then decide, okay, what kind of lines we can use to, and what combination of lines, not only what types, what combination of lines to use to make this emotion to come out in our design. Here are more examples of lines and the things that we basically discussed. Here, for example, these lines, if you look at them, they look like they are designed in a way that they make us feel movement. These are just outlines. You're outlining the shape, contour lines, they are called, to show certain moods, you know, and so on. Typed text automatically creates visual lines. What do we mean here? Now, when we have text, you see this is text. It's clearly text. But when you see it from a distance, okay, from a distance, you actually see lines. So this text, when I look at it from a distance, I see horizontal lines. So text can be used to create lines or make us feel that we are seeing lines. So this is not a line. This is not a line, but it looks like a horizontal line. So when you employ text in your design, you can use it in this way. So you can use the knowledge that you have about lines to create the text and the final effect that you want in your final design. Look at this text, for example. It goes around a curved object. Now, this is, if you see a text like this in a design, it's very different than if you see this. What impression, what feeling does it give you? And it's very different than if you see these kind of lines, okay, in your design. So what do you want the viewer to see or to feel? The feeling is very important. Here are some examples of some illustrations using lines. As you can see, different line qualities. This is, for example, the same line, the regular line, uniform line, but the way it's combined, it kind of creates the feel of movement, you know. Here, for example, we have thick lines going towards thin lines. Now, if these lines were just regular, you know, just a normal, just a line, the end result of the design will not have this effect. It will be different. So the quality of the line, how does the line look like, okay? And the combination of the lines, how they are combined together, these lines, give us the final feel, the final impression, okay? The thing that you want to communicate. Other examples using lines, look at them, okay? Look at these lines. They kind of focus our vision towards this center here, if you notice. Now, look at them, how they start thick and going thin, thick, going thin. This enhances the perspective. I explained that if you have something close to you, you can make the lines thick, and then when it goes away from you, the lines become thin. This is enhancing the strength of the perspective. So now it really looks like that it's really going somewhere, you know, towards this point. Now, if these lines were just normal lines with the same thickness, it will not have this effect. Look at these, for example, lines. They have all the same thickness, but the feeling of this is different. The intention of the designer is different than here. It's different than here. Look here, the line quality, look at it. And the combination of lines. Look at this one. Compare this with this. Look at the lines, how they come together. We feel here in this part that there is really tension. You know, it's like something is squeezing, you know, just by the way the lines are used and combined. Use of lines in architecture. This is just how lines are used in real three-dimensional objects, architectural. So if you notice, we can see, for example, these are vertical lines. So we can see, for example, if you look at this, we see mostly what? Vertical lines, okay? When we see this object, we feel vertical lines, okay? This here, again, mostly we see the vertical lines. They are the strongest in the composition. This is a composition, okay? Of course, we have also horizontal lines, but the vertical are more stronger, okay? And we see that in the design. So what impression, what feel does that give us, okay? Here, for example, in these designs, we can see mostly the horizontal lines are stronger, okay? They are the strongest here. So here we see mostly horizontal lines. And it gives us a different feeling than if the vertical lines were the stronger. So whether you are designing 2D objects on a paper, like, for example, if you're a graphic designer, most of the time you'll be dealing with two-dimensional illustrations and designs. Or if you're a product designer, which you will be designing objects, three-dimensional objects. Architects also design three-dimensional objects, but they are buildings in this case, okay? Mostly focused on buildings. So it depends what area you're in, but what types of lines you use will in the end influence the end result. If you're a fashion designer, for example, this is interesting. Now, if you're a fashion designer and you're designing clothes, you can add certain lines to the clothes. Like if the person is, for example, very fat person, you know, by wearing clothes that have vertical lines can make the fat person look more thin visually. In reality, he's still fat, but he looks more thin. Or if you're very thin and you employ clothes with horizontal lines, It will make you look more fat. And you can use this trick to enhance certain body parts. Like, for example, I want this body part to look thin. So I will employ certain lines in this area. Now, of course, it's not only about lines. We have so many elements of design and the principles also to how to use them. But we are just discussing line here. That's why my examples are focused only on this element. So whatever area of design you are, you will be using lines in design. No way. Okay, you will be using lines all the time. So you need to understand what the power of the line is. The power, okay? It has a lot of power in it, if you know how to use it. Here are also another examples of architectural buildings using what? Diagonal lines at an angle. And look, you can clearly see the use of angle, of diagonal lines here. We don't see vertical, we don't see horizontal, we see the diagonal. It's very strong in these designs. Here we have curved lines. In these architectural examples, we definitely feel that the curved line is the strongest, and this is what stands out in the composition, in the three-dimensional composition. Okay, enough about lines. In the next lecture, I will discuss shape, okay? The next element of design. Thank you for watching and see you soon.